thank you everyone for joining SMP's webinar today for Backup to the Cloud. Again, my name is John Moorhead. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect at SMP. I've been working here at SMP for about 5.5 years now, and I have been working in the IT industry for about 30 years, almost. We also have Kevin Ballou from SoClean, who will be discussing his experiences with Backup to the Cloud as well. We hope that you find this session useful and come away with some tips and items to consider for any current or future backup to the cloud initiatives. Let's briefly review our agenda and then we'll jump right in. First, we'll spend approximately 5 minutes or so on who is SMP, what makes us unique in the industry. We'll cover, why you might want to consider backup to the cloud, some of the challenges around that. We'll be covering some solutions, mostly in general terms, and give a little mention to specific vendors. We'll also provide considerations and tips for cloud backup. SoClean will have a little discussion about their journey with backup cloud and maybe some other IT initiatives. We'll have a brief summary, and then if we have time at the end, we'll open up the lines for for some Q&A. So we'd like you to know who is SMP. So especially for any individuals attending the webinar that may not have done business with us to date, one of SMP's unique values is that we stand behind our services and we deliver against our commitments. And we provide a guarantee around that. So really our philosophy is we treat every situation, organization, and individual with integrity. We really deliver IT solutions with passion and by some of the nicest people around. SMP is probably the only solutions provider that I know, and probably the only one that has a written service guarantee. Yes, we do put this in writing. It's in our statements of works, and we will honor our commitment. Our goal with all engagements and projects is 100% satisfaction. SMP was founded on a concept of putting people first. So really by doing so, we enable that guarantee that we offer. So we really do that by empowering our employees through, we invest heavily in training and certifications. Just as a note that's relevant to this webinar is that we have right around, maybe a little bit over now, 20 AWS accreditations and certifications throughout our organization. SMP also focuses on health and wellness. We're probably one of the only companies of our size that really has a dedicated wellness director. SMP really empowers their employees by cultivating a positive and enthusiastic team. This is really ingrained as one of our core items of our culture. So we also strongly promote our employees to live a balanced life. So as you can see, really SMP's value of putting people first allows us and our customers to benefit. Really how, you have happy employees, they do great work for our customers. Obviously that leads to long and lasting relationships with our customers and partners, which really allows SMP to be a great company and also allows us to really give back to the communities that we live in. I really like to use the phrase, personally, show me, don't tell me. SMP is truly a great place to work, but, really, making the Inc. best workplaces for 2019 really provides that validation. So SMP has been in business for over 22 years, and another key to our success is our strategic vendor relationships. Putting people first has been a proven success factor that is confirmed by the various workplace awards for SMP throughout the years. SMP values our customers. We value the trust we gain with them, and we work tirelessly for 100% satisfaction. I'm not going to read verbatim, some of these great remarks and feedback that we got from our longstanding customers. I'll just note a few of them. Nice quote from M&T Bank. Paying huge dividends. Working with other customers. Exceeding client satisfaction. Instrumental with technology evaluation, and our services, professional services, working with SMP were top notch. SMP has many more satisfied customers. Absolutely, actually, 93%, over 93% retention rate for our customers, and our average tenure for our customers is 9 years. So, with that, SMP currently has six locations, and we're going to be opening up at a Buffalo office soon, later this year in 2019 or early 2020, should be officially open. As of last week, we are currently at 130 employees and growing. SMP is coming off our best year ever, exceeding $100 million in revenue for our fiscal 2019 year, and that just ended on October 31st. SMP this year just launched our innovation group. This group is going to be focusing on enhancing our internal processes as well as developing customer solutions that leverage advanced technologies, including automation, machine learning, AI, digital workers, and more. One example of our innovation that SMP will be releasing soon through this group is automation and advanced analytics for our clients' audio-visual solutions. This innovation solution will focus not just on monitoring, but also has the capability to capture user feedback and perform proactive testing to ensure critical AV rooms and facilities like boardrooms are ready and tested, automatically tested, not just, not days, maybe just hours just before critical meetings. So SMP has many other solutions across our four main pillars: network, data center, security, collaboration. Both SMP's innovation group and our services offerings span across these technology pillars that we implement and support for our customers. So the industries that SMP serves are quite diverse. We pretty much have clients in almost every industry. The only industry that I know that we really don't touch is federal government. SMP provides solutions to many state and local agencies in Western and upstate New York, as well as many other industries across various states. Some of our clients, have global footprints that we support locally, and we also support them abroad from both a virtual and a physical perspective. Partnering with marketing leading vendors is really key to SMP's success over our past 20+ years, and it will be going forward. In addition to our strategic partners listed here, SMP partners with market leaders for all types of cloud solutions, including backup. So some of SMP's key cloud provider partnerships include AWS, Azure, VMware Cloud on AWS, and Veeam and Dell EMC are two SMP partners that not only offer on-premise backup solutions, but offer cloud solutions for both backup and DR. Native cloud solutions for AWS and Azure, as well as cloud backup and DR solutions from these third-party vendors like Veeam and Dell EMC, they all provide rich features, including automation, orchestration, auto scaling, audit logging, reporting, multi-tenancy, and more. Unfortunately, we're not going to really have time to go deep dive into any specific vendor solutions. However, we will be focusing on the why, the challenges, considerations an organization should evaluate to determine if cloud backup is right for them. So let's first focus on reasons why organizations would consider using cloud for backup. First and foremost, everybody considers probably a lot of people are aware of this, but the 3-2-1 backup rule is an easy to remember acronym for really a common approach that a lot of customers will leverage to keep your data safe in almost any failure scenario. The rule is really stated as such: keep at least 3 copies of your data. That includes the original copy and at least 2 backup copies. Store 2 backup copies on different storage media, with one of them located off-site. So really, to clarify this, or let's look at an example. So an example would be like a typical organization may have traditional storage array providing data stores to a VMware data center cluster, a VSXi host, and really to meet the rule, a full backup copy must be performed locally. Not just really, if that local storage array has snapshot copies or technology, that's not really a full backup. That really wouldn't be considered one of the backup copies. So the production data and the backup copies ideally should be kept on 2 different media types. So really in our example, that might be a dedicated storage system for, for local backups. And then lastly, another backup copy would need to be offsite. This is where, cloud may be, may be a good solution for, for that, keeping that offsite copy. So another reason for backup to the cloud is to limit the growth of on-premise secondary storage. A backup policy may be to hold 1 day, 1 week, or some other limited set of backup copies locally, and then leverage cloud for long-term retention requirements. And backup to the cloud allows for additional features and benefits, including disaster recovery, like being able to spin up recovery systems on a moment's notice via well-orchestrated and tested playbook that automates the creation of VMs and other services as needed in the cloud. So other benefits of using the backup data in the cloud includes various possibilities like creation of cloud environments for DevOps, test dev, and also, if a business wants to glean information from that data that's in the cloud, maybe use warehousing, data warehousing tools and other tools to really provide a, insights, business insights and metrics from analytics and reporting. So let's look at some of potential challenges to cloud backup. Obviously, organizations may already have one or more backup solutions today that they may want or really need to keep or leverage due to potentially high investments that they already have, and they still need to depreciate the cost over time. So that might be a critical factor. In the event of a failure scenario, all organizations would prefer to recover locally if possible first, and then leverage the cloud or other off-site backup repositories as a last resort recovery effort. It may be difficult for large enterprises and organizations to find like a single, what I call just right solution. Small organizations may have similar challenges, especially if they have a mixture of various applications, operating systems, hypervisors, et cetera, that require backup, and and may have different backup tools that they are required to use and may not be optional. So local or regional cloud providers may offer very competitive pricing, but those local or regional providers may not really scale well, and they may not integrate with existing enterprise backup solutions. In addition, it may be difficult to standardize on a single backup solution. That would need to support multiple and disparate storage devices and various hypervisors. If a customer is running not just ESXi, maybe they're running ESXi, Hyper-V, KVM, and other hypervisors. So, niche backup solutions may only support a single application, single storage array, single hypervisor, et cetera. Other challenges may be if the solution only offers backup and no future benefit, for DR. So, you have to take that into consideration. Another challenge may be if the solution is cloud native only and specific to only one cloud provider. This may be a future challenge if if the organization would need to migrate from one cloud provider to another, and those cloud native solutions would not migrate at all. The last statement I stated was really to evaluate closely since using cloud solutions features from AWS, Azure, or other native-only backup services may limit an organization's ability to be flexible, and changing cloud providers, may not be easy. So let's look at additional considerations and tips. Most organizations are multi-cloud enabled, or at least leveraging, most companies that we're working with that already have at least one cloud provider that they're leveraging today. Existing cloud provider relationship may be one of the most significant criteria in the decision for a cloud backup strategy or solution. Provider features, benefits, and costs, all need to be considered. Some of them include, support for, an immediate or future DR strategy, support of applications and systems that may be re-hosted or re-platformed or re-architected and migrated to the cloud. And lastly, network costs. You really need to take a look at, what those network costs may be in a steady state, and also potential future migration costs, what that would what that may be. You know, you need to take that into consideration because those costs may be significant. So you really plan for the worst, but you know, you hope to never need to really pull down data out of the cloud in an emergency, because those network costs to pull data out needs to be considered, you know, as I stated, for basically various scenarios. Maybe you need to migrate data from one cloud to another, and there's a significant amount of backups that are only in the cloud for retention purposes and regulatory compliance. You may not have copies of that, you know, locally that you can easily migrate. So, you know, that one-time transfer cost could be significant. So that's something you definitely want to put in as a consideration. So organizations, you know, may opt to use an existing backup software solutions. They may have something that they can leverage, or at least implement a solution that supports, you know, multi-cloud, specifically 2 or more public clouds. So, you know, being specific to one cloud may be, you know, may not be flexible. So cloud native backup and DR solutions you know, it may be more cost effective, but they may be very stringent and inflexible, especially if a customer may need to pivot. Again, I stated this before, they really need to change from one public cloud provider to another. So really the idea of, you know, how do you get started? So, you know, if you're not doing any backup to cloud, obviously the idea of starting small, maybe using a proof of concept is definitely often a highly recommended, you know, course of action, first course of action, especially if there is a, you know, a major CapEx, you know, or a multi-year OpEx commitment required to implement a new backup solution to the cloud. So definitely, you know, doing that in a POC would be, you know, would be recommended. Next, you know, I'd like to introduce, you know, one of SMP's customers and give you a brief introduction. Serving as the VP of Information Systems and Technology at SoClean, Kevin Beaulieu is a recognized leader in the management and implementation of large-scale information and technology systems. For the 2nd year in a row, Deloitte has named SoClean as one of America's fastest-growing technology companies on Deloitte's Technology Fast 500, ranking SoClean 39th in the country. Kevin, I'd like to thank you for accepting the offer to speak at SMP's event today, and I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you very much, John. I appreciate it. So I'm fortunate to be a part of SoClean, which is, as John just indicated, the 2nd year in a row listed on Deloitte's Fast 500. In 2018, we were named the 54th fastest growing technology company in the United States, and this year we were named 39th. The company has gone through a meteoric rise in terms of growth, and along with that has come some challenges, certainly certain benefits in terms of infrastructure deployment, strategies and road mapping, including architecting appropriate backup solutions. The company only a few years ago was a small, sleepy little $10 million, $30 million company, and very rapidly exploded to 90 million in about 8 months, and then in excess of 180 million within another 4 to 8 months after that. In the last 18 months, we've hired 190 staff. We've operated in now 3 separate locations and are continuing to expand our operations both in the United States and internationally. That growth has created certain challenges in terms of how we manage data structures. I was fortunate that when I joined the company, and I'd like to tell folks that I was employee number 5, we were in the middle of a transition between the former corporate headquarters located in Massachusetts and our current corporate headquarters in New Hampshire. I had the unique and enviable position of being able to re-architect the infrastructure for the company as a greenfield. So I was able to step into an environment with a company that had substantial backing, had a trajectory ahead of it, and a charter to go forth and build, as it were, to be able to make an architecture that would sustain the company as it continued its growth path. To that end, one of the things that we were very careful about is engaging with appropriate partners like SMP, choosing appropriate technologies for the size of the company that we were at right now, and choosing technologies that would allow us to continue that growth. Important, and we recognize that technologies that are appropriate for a company that's operating in the sub $100 million range are not appropriate for a company in the 500 to 800 million or north of a $1 billion market share. So one of our challenges was to be able to identify those technologies that we wanted to bring to bear, identify the architectural structures that we wanted to put in place, and determine which was the best platform for us to be able to move forward and grow into. So to that end, that led us down the path of on-premise backup structures, on-premise approaches, and to be able to go forward with our strategy of being able to handle backup and disaster recovery. John, if you can click through to the next slide, I want to take 2 seconds or a few moments and go through if you've got those slides up to the past.
Yep.
The reason I'm going to bring this up is one of the things that I feel is important is to understand the context in which we as a company approached our backup and disaster recovery solutions. So I'm going to take a few moments and give you a framework or an understanding of how I've built the IT/IS team for this company. Our guiding principles are that we provide consistent, standard, and trackable and formal best practices. We deliver on focused ideas that are wrapped around our business practices, that all implemented solutions that we have are supportable, that support is absolutely critical and we own whatever challenges. We are constantly looking for best available platforms, and that means that we continue to look for better solutions even when we have perfectly acceptable solutions in place. And that technology really is an asset to the company, that we invest in technology, we invest in solutions, and we invest in the flexibility and capability that gives to those folks that are working with us. And ultimately, that the technology that we use facilitates integration, reliability, and functionality. Next slide. The way that we split this is by looking at an enterprise architecture, and I won't go into the details, but we split our enterprise architecture into information and technology. That includes apps, systems, and data structures such as ERPs, CDMs, our data lake, our processing APIs, and then our technology architecture, including physical structures like networking, security, wireless, data storage, etc. Next slide. I'm not going to go over this, but one thing that is important is that we as a team and a department within the company and as a company as a whole recognize that there are certain things that information technology brings to a company. In a lot of companies, information technologies, information systems are seen as an expense. We're fortunate in that our CEO and the company as a whole invests in technology. We never stop looking for better solutions, and we always attempt to own that challenge. And one of the critical components is that we empower through capability. We make sure that we've got those solutions in place. Those are the kind of frameworks that allow us to be able to focus on appropriate backup and disaster recovery solutions. Next slide. So quick understanding here. I'm not going to speak about what's on the left, but one of the focuses, our core scope of responsibility within our IT/IS department, and this is different for a lot of companies, but is that we're responsible for security, governance, technology, and information systems. A core element of this is our ability to support backup and recovery. Next slide. The information technology component, structures, etc. Next. Information systems, those data structures that we're actually focused on backing up. What components do we need to be able to have available to the teams and to the company as a whole if we do have a disaster scenario? Next. Information governance. How do we store that data? How do we back up that data? What are the appropriate guidelines that we use when we create backup solutions in the cloud? How do the access controls that we put in place, moving data from our on-premise data servers and data structures into the cloud, how are those governed by HIPAA compliance, GDPR compliance, PCI compliance? Next slide. And then finally, information security. This involves not only controlling the ability to get to that data structures that we've moved either on-premise or in the cloud, but data security also is the data itself secure? Can we rely on the material that we've placed either in our on-premise backup solutions or in the cloud? And can that be pulled and brought back into the company fold if necessary in some event? Next slide. And this is the approach that we take, and this is a fairly common sustain, recovery, protect model, but it gives a clear indication of how we look at being able to protect our data. We have disaster recovery plans with the foundation being built on server storage and networking, moving up through data backup and offsite, alternate sites, information recovery processes, but that's where most companies stop. What's important is that there's validation testing on top of that. The business continuity plans leverage where and when and how we're storing our data structures, and what are the risks associated with how, where, and why we're storing our data. And then those are ultimately governed by policies and the business continuity plan for the company as a whole. Next. And then that leads us back to our guiding principles. How did we get where we are? Why are we doing it this way? And I'll just leave this slide up as I go through our story. When we decided to move the company from its original headquarters, as we grew beyond the original footprint of the company, I sat down with the CEO and the director of operations at the time, vice president of operations, and we determined what the architectural structure that we would have for the company moving forward was. What was the blueprint? What was the roadmap for being able to not only deliver the services we need for our core business model, but how are we going to look at that as we continue to grow? We have unique requirements in terms of being able to store customer private information, PII. We have PCI compliance requirements as we transact against customers' financial information. We have HIPAA compliance concerns because we are responsible for creating a product that touches a medical device, which requires a prescription to have. In addition, we operate in the European theater and outside of the United States, so we have GDPR compliance requirements in terms of being able to manage our data structures. So when we created our original roadmap, the initial footprint was that we would be doing the majority of our corporate business process through our own data center. And one of our core tenets was data separation. We made sure that the architectures that allowed our e-commerce platform to run were not in any way connected to those structures that allowed our core business models to function. So our business applications, our business servers, our business storage devices were located on premise on our servers. Our e-commerce environment is operated out of an AWS architecture that is completely separate. And then as we grew beyond our on-premise, we stretched our data center into Azure, which allowed us to keep a clean separation between our customer-facing and public-facing data structures in AWS and the stretch of our core data center components into the Azure space. One of the challenges we had was we grew so quickly that when we started, there were very few individuals from an IT resourcing standpoint to be able to manage whatever structures we put in place. So when we sat down with SMP and we decided how we were going to roadmap our backup and disaster recovery plan, one of the challenges was a lack of resources internally on the ITIS side to be able to manage those components. We just didn't have the engineering capabilities. We didn't have dedicated engineers for backup. We didn't have dedicated engineers for disaster recovery. We had to leverage those resources that we had available, which in the early days as employee number 5 was mostly me. I like to joke, and it's actually not a joke, that I stood the data center up in the dining room of my house, which my wife was not too pleased about, and then migrated it and put it on premise here. And it wasn't very long before we outgrew that data center, bought an adjacent building, created a campus, created secondary data centers, and then stretched those data centers into Azure to provide not only off-premise, but flexibility in our disaster recovery plans. So we as a company started with the traditional, what data needs to be backed up? We looked at what happened to our data structures that were from the original small company in Massachusetts. Their backup strategy was typical of most small early growth companies. And that was, we have data, it's sitting on a couple of computers. Every so often we're going to go around and we're going to grab that data and we're going to put it in a new location. And then we'll continually manually process that. Early on, we determined that Veeam was an appropriate backup solution, an appropriate partner for us. So we built out the roadmap for being able to have our hyperconverged cluster. We determined that for us, the best option was to build our own vSAN environment, and Veeam integrated nicely with that. So we were able to build very quickly the ability to do on-premise backup of all data that was sitting inside our hyperconverged cluster. As we continued to grow and we added more staff and we added more resources, and our server cluster grew from 5, 10 to 80, 90 servers, we wanted to make sure that we took those next steps in terms of moving that data structure into the cloud. The CEO of the company is very cloud focused. He's very flexible. Agility is important to him. So the cloud presented an opportunity to not spend a large CapEx to be able to build our own on-premise or localized off-premise colo. Rather, we wanted to be able to leverage services that were available to us and allowed us to move outside of those services if we outgrew them. So Azure turned out to be an efficient way for us to be able to extend that data recovery into the cloud. The integration with the platforms that we were looking for existed both in AWS and Azure, but the native functionality in Azure was a better match for how we wanted to be able to stretch our data center. Being able to move our data pool from Veeam, which is on-premise, to Veeam extended in the cloud, where we were copying local repositories into another location, was only the first step. We wanted to be able to move also into a disaster recovery mode. So we employed Zerto to be able to do that. We were able to, with the help of SMP, deploy an appropriate architecture such that in conjunction with 3-hour backup windows and incremental backup windows across the daily operations of the company for Veeam, which are then replicated into the cloud, we're able to create appropriate RPOs for our critical data servers and build that into Azure such that in the event of a DR scenario, we would be able to very quickly spin up those servers that are critical to our operations outside of our company. One way that we were able to do that was we took great pains to be able to build overlapping subnets within the cloud such that in the event of a disaster situation, we didn't want our engineers to be focused on multiple tasks simultaneously. We wanted a very clear, straightforward runbook on how they would bring services back up to be able to facilitate capability within the company. One way that we could do that was within our architecture for our network. By building appropriate overlapping subnets in the cloud, we're able to drop new core routes directly into our core routing structures within our network operations and redirect all of those data center calls out to our DR environment, which we could spin up through Zerto in Azure. So by leveraging both time-based and window-based backup through Veeam and on our VMs, and then pushing those replicated in the cloud, we had traditional recovery capabilities. But in addition to that, we overlaid on top of that Zerto as a DR solution. And with the appropriate network architecture, we have approximately 3 button clicks to be able to stand up our operations in the cloud in the event of a DR situation. First case of operations is we sever the connectivity into our hyperconverged cluster so that there's no overlap. Second step is that we reach into our Zerto operations in Azure and begin recovering services to that overlapping subnet in Azure. And then step number 3 is we insert those overlapped redirects, those new routes, such that our core networking, when it's attempting to reach our isolated server space, subnet space, is now routing that traffic out to our Azure interconnect stretch data center. And that gave us a very clean and efficient way of being able to appropriately provide the necessary backup and recovery for the company's operations in the cloud. It also achieved the goals that we had, which is it's supportable. It uses the latest technology that we have available to us. It's also replaceable. So as a new product comes on, we can emulate or move to that. We've managed to make it consistent and standardized across all of our locations. And we're able to deliver solutions that are business focused. What are those core components that we have to do? What are the obligations that we need to be able to serve from a business standpoint? And how can we meet our needs from a DR capability, a multi-location capability, and more importantly, a data integration and data reliability standpoint. So that's a quick snapshot on how we, as a company that's grown exponentially in the last 4 to 5 years, including multiple site acquisition, headquarters move, new data center build outs, hiring of approximately 190 folks within 18 months, how we were able to address those growth challenges, those data delivery challenges, and more importantly, data backup and data recovery, and what components of the cloud played, how those played into that roadmap. And really the last part of that, the last chapter, is our continued evaluation. Is the cloud the right place to be for us as we continue to grow from a 300 million to a 1 billion and beyond company? We are very strongly looking at whether continuing to push our Zerto solution in Azure is the appropriate choice. Do we want secondary DR solutions that also sit on our operations out in Montana? Are we better served by having multiple data centers in conjunction with stretching our data to the cloud? All of those things are part of industry best approach, which is we're continuing to look for the best solutions that are out there, even though we have perfectly acceptable solutions here. So again, that's a quick overview of how SoClean has done its disaster recovery and backup, how we've utilized the cloud, and how we've worked with SMP to be able to do that.
Great. Hey, Kevin, thank you. We got one more slide here, just a very brief summary, and then we can open up the lines if there's any questions. But just as a quick summary, what I covered was, some of the considerations and challenges and tips, the 3-2-1 rule, and, enterprise extended, extend on premise, not really replace it. You really want to consider, there's a lot of considerations, as we heard, through the presentation. What's the cloud, what's the right cloud provider, what's the right software? It might be something you already own. And, just, top tip, don't just use the cloud for a digital graveyard of data. So obviously there's a lot of ways of using that, leveraging that for DR, and maybe DevOps, test dev, analytics, and things like that. So wanted to thank everyone for attending.